It's been a busy summer. Lots going on behind the scenes, and haven't been posting a lot lately. But when Brian Byrd reached out to me from Old Fashion Masonic Podcast, I jumped at the chance. This is a great talk, and he's allowing me to cross-post it here because he posted it on his channel, and you should definitely go check that out. It's called the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast. Two things I like a lot: old fashions, Masonry, and as my good friend and psychic Duane Keir aptly named me, the Dean Martin of ufology. So hope you enjoy this one, and be ready. The fall and the winter are going to be great.
Welcome to the Old Fashion Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons while drinking an old fashioned. I'm Brian, and we have an out-of-this-world episode. It'll make sense later, and I'm honored to introduce Jon Majerowski. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you, brother. Thank you very much for the invite and for inviting me on your awesome podcast.
I love it. We saw an episode, which we'll talk about a little bit later. We saw an episode of what you do. And folks, if you're looking in the background, yes, you are seeing a square and compass. Yes, you're seeing a spaceship. Yes, you're seeing an alien off to the side. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, and it's all going to make sense later. I mean, maybe it's the new secret symbols of Masonry that we're about to uncover for the world, right?
Maybe.
So Jon, as we do on our podcast, we like to know as much about the man as we do the Mason. So tell our listeners, who is Jon the man?
Oh, cool. Thanks. So I am information security specialist by day, CISSP. So I do information security. So it's the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information systems, right? So basically slowing down the hackers. You're never going to stop them, but I'm trying to throw up as many roadblocks as I possibly can, right? So I do that by day. I'm a father, husband. I like hot rods. I like, rat rods and cars. I'm actually a Shriner as well, and a Jeepster. So we're in a Jeepster club. I got a 1948 Jeepster. We drive in 40 parades a year, and all that money goes right to the Shriners Hospital for Children. So we donate every time we go to a parade. We get a donation from the Rotary Parade Committee, and we just literally write a check and hand it over every year, right to the hospital. So I get to do that. So it kind of mixes my love of Masonry, hot rods, and helping out kids at the same time. So I do that a lot. That kind of books me up for most weekends in the summer, and of course the podcast. So I have a podcast called UFOs on the Level, and all about UFOs and consciousness and Masonry and kind of all that mix in the middle. So that's kind of me.
I love it. I love it. We're going to get to the UFOs on the level here a little bit. So now you teased a little bit about Masonry, which I absolutely love. So we have the Jeepsters. Your Jeepster, what color is it? Orange?
It's red. It's red.
It's
yeah.
red.
They're all red. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're all orange.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Jeeps, and they're called the Motor Patrol, but they're Jeepsters, and great unit. The cheapest thing is buying them. The everything else is maintaining it. That's where it costs money, right?
Yeah. That's it, man. I mean, it's not easy to keep a 1948 Jeepster on the road.
Right. No kidding. So walk us through your Masonic journey from when you started to where you're at today.
Wow. Okay. So where I started was I was young. I was probably, I think it was 26, 27, 28, and small town, Swanton, Ohio. And I actually owned a restaurant at the time. It's a crazy story, but young guy kind of owned a restaurant, and one of the older guys would come in every day. We had free Wi-Fi back in like 2000, 5, 6. That was a big deal, right? Free Wi-Fi.
Yeah. That's how you go on Ask Jeeves.
Yeah, that's it. 20 years ago, you couldn't get free Wi-Fi. You had to just pull up and get it. So one of the guys that was in there was an older guy, and he had a laptop, and he came in every day, and eat lunch, hang out, really cool. And he's on his laptop. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm day trading, just hanging out. You got free Wi-Fi. But I noticed he had a Masonic ring, and I was always interested in it. So I asked him about it, and he said, you would really like it. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I read all the conspiracy theories at the time, all the Jim Marrs books and everything else you can get your hands on. Masons are running the world. And I asked him all those things, and he's like, no, not at all. And he's like, it'd be really cool. So got a petition. Long story short, went through a degree that became, was raised in 2008, I think, like that. And then, just basically started going through the chairs a little bit. And then I kind of took a step back, went through a divorce. So I kind of, stepped back a little bit, and life happens. Right. So when I got back into it, and the cool thing about Masonry is when I went through the line where, went through the degrees, I kind of felt like I was home. It's really weird. And I always say that in podcasts and my brothers and stuff like that, but it feels like, man, I'm back. It's a weird feeling, right? But I felt like, man, I'm back. And I met some of the coolest guys in the entire planet, right? Everybody. So I felt like it was just like my extended family coming home.
That you might not have met in the real world.
Never would have met in the real world. Like literally sitting next to the congressman on my left and right is the janitor from our high school, right? And all these guys are the coolest guys in the world, right? Yep. And we're together and they're still greatest friends, right? And I wouldn't have crossed paths with them at all, ever. So that's been an amazing journey to go through that. I kind of got more interested, right? So I went through York Rite. I went through the entire York Rite and tried to check that out. Just recently became a Knights Templar. So that was rad. That was a really cool experience. But, I went through the York Rite, and then a friend of mine, growing up, next door neighbor, best friends forever, his dad passed in Florida. And he called me and said, hey, I didn't know my dad was a Shriner and a Mason. And I didn't know either. I said, we're flying him back. I can't find his apron. Oh my God, what do we do? So made some calls, and we have a lodge that's basically, I can't remember, they're going to kill me for not remembering it, but basically if brothers from out of town, out of state, and they need to perform funeral rites, we do that, right? So they asked me to be a part of it. And, that was rough, to get up there and like, oh, we're a guy short too. So here's the script, get up there and read it.
And somebody you know.
Yeah. And somebody I know, one of my best friends here, his whole family crying, and I'm trying to hold it together.
Yeah.
But I did that, and that was really rad. And through that process, I all they could find at the time was his Zenobia Shrine card, right, from the shrine that I'm at. So that's when I reached out, and as I did that, I got connected with the guys, and then they said, hey, coming up, we're having a 1-day thing where basically you're going to become a Shriner and, 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason. It's like, we're going to put it all together. We're going to go through this. And I said, okay, cool. After I went through that experience and that's awesome. So I went through that, joined the Scottish Rite. And then, of course, I was a part of a few degrees, I was part of the cast in a couple of degrees, and that was great to do that and, connect with brothers that, of course, again, I never would have met before, right? And, really enjoy the Scottish Rite and the allegory and the morals and the stories that goes on there. And the shrine is just a whole lot of fun too, kind of a different side of that, right?
Yeah.
Actually out doing some fun stuff. So I did that. Along the way, I got asked to join a couple other bodies. I think it was about 2 months ago, Knight Masons of the United States. I was asked to join that. I was privileged enough we actually founded another unit here right in Ohio. So that was cool. So I became a Knight Mason, and the SRICF actually as well. So I was privileged enough to join that. So,
What's that?
Society, my Latin is terrible.
The Rosicruciana.
The Rosicrucian, yeah, that's the society, and forgive me, I'm not.
Civitatibus, Foederatis.
Yeah, Foederatis. Yeah, that's it. And a couple more of these, I'll get that whole thing out.
Oh man, I had to read it and still just chew it up. It was not good.
Yeah. That's I didn't know that existed until I was, was asked if I wanted to join. And when I did, it was rad. It was beautiful. I love it. It's basically the Rosicrucian branch of Masonry, right? So it's right. Christian Rosicrucians, and goes back to that for the Fatima. So that's been really eye-opening, and the whole esoteric side of that is just awesome. That was why I joined Masonry. I think a lot of guys, when I got in, obviously I was like craving that whole esoteric part of it.
Yep.
And I really didn't find it until I started looking around and kind of went to the other bodies. But when I got back, you go back to Blue Lodge, and I realized it's all there. It's all right there in front of you. Yep. You just got to interpret it and look at it in different ways. All the symbols are there. The allegory, everything is right there in front of you. Yep. And it's one of those things where I ask people ask me, what about Masonry? It's like, well, for me anyway, it's whatever you want to get out of it, it's there. I mean, if you want to go, I remember going to the bookshelf in my lodge, and my lodge is 1800s charter or something like that, and popping open this bookcase, glass case, and 3 inches of dust on these books. Take out whatever you want, talk to some guys. And that's kind of where I got started in that whole esoteric side, and did my own research, and then kind of luckily enough connected with a lot of guys that were into that as well, right? And then grew my community that way.
That's the cool thing about Masonry, because your Masonry looks different than my Masonry, and my Masonry looks but there's something for everyone. And if you want to put in a little bit of effort, you can get twice as much back, right? It's not, well, I just come and sit in a meeting. Listen, I'm speaking for me, not for you. Meetings, boring. Degree work, any sort of esoteric, that is awesome to me. camaraderie before and after great meetings. I mean, we've all been in meetings. We hear agendas and bills and all that. But, if we would incorporate really good Masonic education that's interactive, I think that could really change the course, because then you get something for everyone in there.
Yeah, definitely. In Ohio, we have a district education officers, right? So like I don't know if you like that in Kansas as well, but we have an education district lodge education officer, and brother of mine is awesome in the fifth district here, actually the 11th, and he'll do lectures. So he'll come in and power like a projector and do some really cool expounding upon parts of the degree or parts of masonry that you would not actually have dived into by yourself. Another brother of mine in his lodge, Robbie Franks, is awesome. He started last year a lecture series. So they would have a regular meeting, or they would just have a special meeting where no business. It wasn't any of the sitting through the bills and all that stuff. It would just show up, and we're going to have a lecture on this, right? And that actually drew large crowds, guys that normally wouldn't come out. They'd come out to hear lectures about whatever. I was fortunate enough, he asked me to do a lecture, so I kind of drew a crowd and talked about UFOs. It's not normally something that happens, right? But
right.
Bringing all those guys together is pretty cool. So yeah.
And again, there's just so much when you step away from lodge for a while because life gets in the way, and you come back to your point, which you mentioned earlier. I always feel home, and it's really people. That's where people think it's cultish. Like how's an 18-year-old and a 57-year-old guy just talking chatter, because we've been through it the same way. And it always does feel like home. And that's, I guess, if I ever, feel like I ever get to that dark place, I feel like I have that outlet where I've got somebody that I could go there and they would bring me out. And I would love to see more former military join, because there's some just stuff that people deal with, but especially them. I mean, that fraternal bond that they have in the military as being a prior service, that fraternal bond that I felt like I was missing, is why I sought out Masonry. It's there. If you put in a little bit of effort, that return is immense.
Totally. Yeah, no, I've met some of the greatest guys in the world that I never would have had a chance to meet without Masonry. And I'm thankful for it, honestly.
It's really I think it's maybe for you'd agree, it's really made me a better person, probably a little more open. Being in the Midwest, we're pretty blinded, and it's really made me be a little more patient and understanding about other views. When you're as brothers, we did an episode recently with the Grand Master of Russia, and I thought it might have went a totally different direction, but I felt like that the cement of brotherly love was being spread, and it worked out better than I had hoped.
Yeah, no, that was amazing. I watched that podcast, and that was amazing. I expected a completely different turn, especially leading up to it, and you can see, and personally, I could see during the beginning of the show, it kind of was a lot of formalities, feeling it out, kind of going, and then you could see that kind of rapport building as it
the
went.
body language changing.
Even with the body language and just the rapport that you guys got on, as it went through, and I thought it was great, and reminded me that, I think what he was saying, we talked about the Civil War, right, from both sides, the Masonry
just
here
stopped.
in America.
Yeah,
right, but there was still that, the connection. They still had the conversations. The brothers were still, what's the famous statue that's. I can't remember.
I can picture it, and
it's like a relief of a brother, right? So it's like the North and the South, and I think one of the guys was dying, and he handed him his watch and his wallet and his papers, and said, "Please get this to my son, my family, right?" And he was comforting the brother, and it's like one of those things. And I think, was that brought up during your podcast?
It was, in fact, they brought it.
They brought it up, right?
And so that's interesting that the American Civil War, that was something that was top of mind, which. That kind of hit me a different way, maybe because I wasn't expecting it, but I thought, okay, all right, that crossed not only generations, but also language barriers. So so cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that was probably a big deal. I mean, obviously it resonates with different country, different culture, a different life,
And there's probably stories in the Grand Lodge of Russia, Italy, all the wars over the years. We can't be naive enough to think that a battle only stopped in the United States in the 1800s. I'll bet you there's stories all over the place, right? And that's awesome.
Of course. Yeah, that was really cool, man. Thank you for doing that. That's rad. I mean, I think that needs to happen more. Totally.
Yeah, we got lucky, that's for sure. So we have a lot of listeners that say, hey, you need to talk to this person, this person. So your name came up. I'm like, all right, what's he all about? I look up and I said, UFOs on the level. What in God's name is going on here? So folks, look at the top here. You'll see a link to his YouTube channel. So give us the spill. Why did you start it? What do you do? What would a listener, if they were going to come to your podcast, what are they going to gain?
Well, I think they're going to gain a different viewpoint on things that they normally would have suspected that they knew the answers to. And then that's kind of what I really tried to do. It was during the pandemic. I've been a lifelong, fan or believer, researcher of UFOs. Right when I was a kid, my dad, would always tell me he saw a UFO in the 50s, like early 60s, something like that. And it was a large group of people in Toledo. It was like kind of looked like a blimp, but it was broad daylight, real low. It was stopping traffic. People are out in other cars, stuff like that. And then he saw another one in the 70s that was other people as well. And there was no reason for my dad to lie to me. I'm a little kid, he's just telling me these things. And then so I believed it my whole life. Why would you not believe that, right? And then the 80s come around, and it's kind of that disinformation campaign started, right? Where tinfoil hat, you're crazy, this isn't real, you guys are just you're nuts,
right?
But my dad was always really into it, researching it. He subscribed to like UFO magazines, and we get VHS tapes. You'd send away from him in the mail, and you get a VHS tape with a lecture of somebody talking about UFOs, somebody from the government or something like that. So I've always been into it, and it was really scary for a while because in the 50s and all the way up until recently, I wouldn't say who, but sometimes people that were researchers or had experienced these anomalous things were threatened. Sometimes they may have been murdered or, potentially, things like that, right? Some people fall out of a window or, car accident, things like that, right? So I was always really nervous to be public about it. And then 2017 happened with the New York Times front page. It was black money. The government's been studying UFOs for this many years, $22 million. It's been, it's real, right? And then the release of 3 videos from the DoD here. These are actual videos of things we don't understand. We don't know what they are. Right. UFOs, right? Boom, right there. The stigma's lifted, right? In my mind, I'm like, okay.
Like now they don't think I'm crazy anymore.
Yeah, the van's not going to show up and haul me away now, right? They're not going to pull me out and throw me in the van. So I'm like, okay, cool. And so, I started talking about on Twitter a lot, and a guy that was on there reached out and said, man, you have a really cool perspective on this. You should just do a podcast. I'm like, nah, nobody's supposed to do it. He's like, no, man, I think you should do it. So, okay, cool. So, I started out, my very first podcast was with a brother of mine, and we were talking about Aleister Crowley and how it ties into ufology, because one of the first things he drew was a picture of an entity that looks kind of like the gray alien, kind of looks like this thing,
Right.
Yeah, and everybody kind of associates like that. So that was kind of, my first dip into, if you go back and look at that first video, I'm like, oh my God, I had no idea what I was doing, but I just dove in, right? So, and then I just broadened it out because I was like, I want to talk to people that want to have a conversation about things in an open setting, right? I'm not going to grill you. I don't have a list of questions. I just want to meet you on the level, right? And just ask you questions. You can ask me questions and just have a conversation as humans, and hopefully come out with a friend, at the end. And if, knock on wood, everyone I have had, that's been the case. And, it's all over the board. I mean, we went from UFOs. I mean, there's this huge tie to just consciousness. It's not just one thing. It's multiple things. I mean, life after death, cryptids, weird things that, that people see that they can't explain. Missing time. Yeah. All these things, they kind of all have a connection, and that connection, from what I've been able to gather, is just that somehow it all connects to consciousness, where that all ties in. So I just kind of like go through it and meet brothers. There's some great interviews with some brothers I've had on there. They're authors, and they kind of delve into some of these topics as well. And I've got to meet some great people from all over the place that just can elevate the conversation in a respectful manner to stop the giggle factor. Every time it's on any of the news, everybody's like, laughing, and that's kind of dying down now because it's serious.
Sure it is.
So,
the recent event, maybe in the last 6 months in Las Vegas, that So initially
Wild,
it was
right?
kind of weird, but now it seems like it's getting a little deeper.
Yeah, there's been a very long-standing campaign from the media, and it's been directed by the U.S. government for sure, for disinformation, right? For disinformation, Project Blackbird, basically just to quell all these stories, make everybody think they're crazy. That's not real. This didn't happen, or put fake news stories out to just muddy the waters on all of these things, right? Because if you don't know what to believe, if there's just a bunch of crap out there, it might be there's much truth, but the rest of it's just murky, right? And one of my goals, and I actually got to meet a couple of brothers, but I know there's got to be some brothers involved in this. I know there's Masons somewhere, and what was one of the things, I have a bunch of theories, but then I go into it a lot in my podcast about, this latest disclosure movement, right? This public disclosure movement. And one of my main theories is that I believe that there's a lot of Masons involved. I think there's a lot of Masons involved because they're from different branches, different walks of life.
Sure.
Maybe military, maybe, private sector, all these things. But I think a lot of them got together at one point and was like, we can trust each other. We want to do this. This is for the betterment of humankind. How to do it? Let's do it together. And I think that's kind of what the latest disclosure push is. And I've been really trying to dig into that and find those answers.
I love it. So, UFOs, I am not naive enough to think that we're the only planet to have life. And if you, so I can go that far. I'm a visual person, but then somebody can say, well, what about your belief? Well, that's a feeling too. So I've not,
right.
But what made it a little real for me was two things. One, all that black money, but two, when the Space Force was created, I thought, wait a minute.
Out of nowhere, right?
There might be something to this, because otherwise, President Trump would have got smoked for other reasons for bringing this in. But then there's like, well, shit, maybe that's what with the black money. And then that I thought, this has been an interesting cover up for the last 60 years. And how many people that have maybe passed now never got the chance to feel vindicated, but now they're like, I told you.
Right. No, it's a real big deal. And I say this a lot too, is that everybody, once you've had an experience, and I've had my own experiences, once you have that experience of something in the sky or something that happens to you that it's a real experience to you, you can't shake that. It's not. There's a lot of people that can just block it out and pretend it didn't happen. Like, oh, that didn't happen, But once you have an experience with an interaction of non-human intelligence, right, you kind of go, okay, I need to figure out what this is. And a lot of people, it kind of sends them on the journey, right? Kind of where I'm at to look for answers to things that don't have any answers, but and ask more questions, right? And that's kind of what I've been doing, just keep going down there, and you can't shake it once it happens. Honestly,
I think this is the absolute best time for you to be on this journey, because there's interest and a lot more credibility than if there were podcasts in the 50s. There was radio, but that would have been the Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs crowd, right? I mean, you would have been put in that category.
Right. Yeah,
right. And I think now there's a lot more openness of like, what? There are so many more cameras. I think part of the deal with technology, it's harder to hide in the 50s, you could hide everything. You can't really do that now. Is that fair?
Oh, that's fair. Yeah. I mean, it was one of the big deals is like, we're talking about like in the 80s, right? If you had a VHS tape of a UFO, you get that knock on the door. Hey, buddy, give me that tape. It didn't exist. Give me the whole camera, right? Give me your film. That's it. It's gone away, and everybody got told to be quiet, And, I think a lot of the reason is it might be legitimate, right? There's a lot of rationale for me that I've gone through. I went from the side of like, shit, they just need to tell us everything right now to, well, maybe there's a really good reason.
Maybe a national security reason.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. And I think that's a lot to do. I mean, and not to say some of the things that we see aren't prosaic as far as, black tech, that's, new things that we, but I'm always saying the government's got technology that's at least 40 years, if not more advanced than we have right now. Like this iPhone is 40 years old compared to, some of the stuff that they have. So what's to say that they don't have anything that's advanced like that? But
we can't be that naive, right?
Right. Of course.
Yeah. So I encourage everybody, go check out the podcast. If you're hearing him, how he's speaking, he's got nice, steady, he'll get amped up on him and they'll go back and forth. And you've got some really solid views. So go check out what Jon does. So we're going to bring Jon back. He's going to channel his open-mindedness here. So we're gonna ask him some of our standard questions we ask.
Yeah,
So,
cool.
Jon, are you familiar with an Affinity Lodge?
I'm not. I don't think we have them in Ohio, but help me out. I think it's. Give me the rundown and see if.
I say this because based on what you do. So in Kansas, 10, maybe 12 years ago, they started Affinity Lodges. And the first one that was started in Kansas was Justice Lodge. And they are all law enforcement. So whether police officers, sheriffs, judges, and so they still had to be a member of another lodge, but there was an Affinity Lodge that could meet quarterly, yearly, however they do. But it's where like-minded brothers come.
Okay, cool.
So there are lodges for motorcycle riders, firemen, and whatnot. So I say that because so in Texas, there's Tranquility Lodge number 2000, which I'm a member of, right?
Yeah, that's the Lodge on the Moon, the Buzz Aldrin. Yeah.
Right. So we can't be naive to think, why couldn't there be a Tranquility Lodge of sorts, but the UFO Lodge based in Ohio that's got members everywhere, and you're like-minded and you get to I know there's a Star Trek Affinity Lodge where everyone does. So that brother will be coming on soon. So that's going to be fascinating as hell. So Affinity Lodges, what's your initial reaction? You don't know a lot, and I'm catching off guard. What's your initial?
No. I think that's great. I think that's awesome. I think it'd be really cool. Like I said, one of the things was I know there's brothers out there that we can talk to, right? That would keep secrets, and that would be really cool. P.D. Newman, a brother, of ours, is an author, and I had him on the podcast, and I was asking about the same kind of thing. I said, hey, what do you know about this? And he said, well, it was the intelligence community actually infiltrated, his words, a lot of lodges out in Colorado, to the point where they started their own lodge, right? So there was like all intelligence, military intelligence, government intelligence agencies, that guys that made their own lodge. Before that, they were kind of just, I don't know if they were just brothers trying to join, and or if they're trying to get secrets or whatever. Right. But they ended up starting their own lodge in Colorado. So it's all intelligence. So it kind of reminds me of that. But yeah, I think that would be really cool to have a bunch of brothers that are into that and like-minded. That would be really
cool. And I love Affinity Lodge. So there was a lot of hoopla, shocker, when you go to do something new in Masonry, people freak out.
Yeah.
But
we didn't do that in my year.
Yeah, right. Well, that's exactly right. Well, that's not on the level. First of all, they have to be Masons, but I love Affinity Lodges.
Yeah.
Because it gives a brother another outlet if they're not being fulfilled at their home lodge because their Masonry looks different. This gives them an outlet. And I love tools in the toolbox. I love options for the brothers.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I like that idea. I'll have to talk to some of the guys. That'd be rad.
So this is a little deeper.
Okay.
Nobody living. Who would you like to have dinner with that you've never had dinner with before?
Wow.
And why?
So I got two ways with this. Everybody wants to pick somebody famous, and I would pick Nikola Tesla, just because from his mind, but just because I've read from him some of his habits. He didn't. If you really wanted to be
maybe time travel.
Yeah, I mean that would be cool. But I'm thinking maybe I wanted to have dinner with maybe my great grandmother, like that. Something like that. Somebody just. Really, really way back, somebody I could still relate to. So maybe 1700s, 1800s, but just, just kind of get that feel of what life was like for them and what they were thinking.
Most people go famous, but maybe an ancestor, because it might explain, like, why am I so wackadoodle every once in a while?
Yeah, exactly. Like when you see the guy do the weird thing that I always do, like, that's where I got it from, right?
Yeah, right. We love that. A listener brought that years ago. We absolutely love that question because it really makes you think, right?
Yeah. Everybody goes for the famous, but I'd really like to see an ancestor, what they had going on, for sure.
Yeah. It'd be interesting. You go back and because in the 1700s, they may not have used the term UFO, but have you seen anything you can't explain? There may be a whole nother series of, and it'd be interesting how they would describe a situation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the big deals in ufology. I mean, Jacques Vallée is an author, and he's been ufology forever, right? He was actually the inspiration for Steven Spielberg's The French Guy in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, so the French scientist. So he's got a whole number of books, but he kind of connects, the fairy folklore and all of the folklore tales from, Ireland and England, Scotland, all those things kind of all have a kind of a root as well in the paranormal and ufology and all that stuff. It's and even older in religion, so it's kind of like the same thing, but just branded different, right? In the 1800s, they saw steamships in the air, right? Big balloons and things like that they couldn't explain, and people would land and say they're from Mars and things like that. So it's weird. It's just kind of I feel like it's the same branch of the tree, right? It's just different aspects of it.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really cool.
So I ask this question a lot, and I like to hear the different perspectives, not only from across the country, across the world, and generationally speaking too, but why do you think more men aren't joining Masonry today?
Well, I think there's a couple things. I think one of them would be knowledge, I hate to say publicity, right? But they don't know. They think it's this club where you have to be tapped or
old rich white guys.
Yeah, that or they just don't know how the fraternity works at all. And like we talked about earlier, this is this conception that we're worshiping the devil and there's all this weird esoteric stuff going on, and we're all these things. And I think that it wasn't until movies like National Treasure and things like that, and it got out more into the zeitgeist, that people started to go, well, maybe there's something to this, the old white guy thing's probably a part of it as well. But I really think that a lot of people have reached out to me ever since I started my podcast and say, hey, how do we become a Mason? What do I do? And I'm excited when that happens, because then I direct them to the local,
it puts a face and a personality that's not what they thought. And that was the exact reason we started this podcast, because I thought, I've done membership, been a membership chairman and all that, but what can we do to put a face on Masonry that's not what anyone thinks? And we have so many faces of Masonry. And that was the real reason why this morphed was, I'm going to try to do my part to save this.
Oh, that's right. And it really needs to happen. I think that there's this push recently, in my mind anyway, that people are looking for something else. Like with ufology, right? People are, now it's out, we can talk about things like that. And we can talk about things that we normally wouldn't, that might have been taboo before. We can investigate things. And I think that's kind of what the draw is for a lot of guys, right? Okay, this is cool. And I think, another question that we could ask is, why can't we retain Masons? And unfortunately, I've had a couple of friends. Yeah, a couple of friends of mine, early on, I was newly a Master Mason, and I was telling everybody how awesome it was. And I had, a couple of friends that I want to join. And they went through the first degree and they were like, nah, just this for me, And after I brought two guys through and that happened, I started going, man, I don't know if I want to bring guys. I don't want to do this again. I feel bad for my lodge. I feel bad for the guys. I feel bad for myself. I'm like, I don't like you. I really got to make sure somebody wants to do this, and before, but that was only two cases. And, one of them was, unfortunately, was due to religion. He was, Catholic Church. He was studying to be a deacon in the Catholic Church. And the bishop told him he's got to pick between Masonry and Catholicism. And that broke his heart, man. He was really into Masonry, but he was really into, Catholic faith. I
get both, right? I hate that we have to make choices. We had an episode where we had a priest in our studio. We talked.
I saw that. Yeah.
And he unfortunately he caught some smoke from that afterwards. Like, why?
Really?
I think he caught a little bit of smoke because maybe the Catholic camp didn't feel like he was hard enough on the Masons. And we even got a little bit of smoke from, why weren't you a little harder on the Catholic priests? Like, we're talking.
Yeah.
We're grown men talking. Why do we have to beef? There's enough to beef about, but with a priest.
Oh, really? That's amazing. I've heard of priests secretly being Masons,
Well, we all know most people know Catholics that are Masons, and at least where I'm from, there's a lot of them, and they're great donors. So they're not going to be messed with. I'm quite certain.
I'm Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I think I still am. I don't know. That whole excommunication thing came out last November, the February again, the kind of, it was this February, that kind of pissed me off.
It was that. Yeah.
That kind of, if you look at one of my podcasts on there, I'm not really, you'll have to excuse me. I had a lot more old fashions that night. I was really heated about that whole thing.
Oh, you can tell on ours though, when we have live shoots, we'll do 4 or 5 episodes and bank them, right?
Yeah.
And by episode 5, you can tell we look like we've got heart disease. Our face is red. We're slurring. It is not good. So we've stopped banking 5 in a day because of that. Somebody's going to slip up and lose their dues card. It's going to
be good. Yeah, for sure.
So
no, I think it needs to be more. So going back to your question, I'm sorry. There needs to be more. There needs to be more education as far as public. Like you're doing. This is great. I mean, I think it's amazing to get the face out there to get people to understand that Masonry is more than what this made up fairy tale that everybody believes it is. And that we are doing good work, and we're improving ourselves. We're improving.
And there's something different for everyone.
Exactly.
What does it for you or doesn't for me, there's something for you. I promise you, there's something for you. We're not all old. We're not all rich. We're not all white.
Nope, not at all.
So if these were the 3 reasons, push that to the side. We just solved the first set of problems. What else do you want to talk about?
Yeah. I think the amount of, and I never had problem public speaking, I was in radio and things like that. And, whatever before, but I've seen guys come in that were, really meek and really good guys, and then just go through Masonry and then be able to be amazing lecturers, like to get up in front of crowds of people and just have the confidence to be able to speak and to unite people and stuff like that. And that just makes me so happy that Masonry provides just that little one tiny thing. Like you said, there's things for everybody, but just seeing that, huge, right?
So a guy that I came in with, I became a Master Mason with, a Scottish Rite Mason with, and a Shriner with, all at the same time as when we went through our journey.
Yeah.
And we went through the line together at our lodge, and he was behind me.
That's cool.
And he's like, I'm not extroverted. I'm not really that. This guy, he is not as buck-ass wild as I am, but he is. He had my favorite leadership style, and his name's Mike Ward. He was the first guy we ever shot back when our episodes were really shitty and the camera was on. He was terrible. But Mike is one of my favorite humans, but he's one of my favorite leaders because he put this pressure on of having to follow Byrd's big mouth and big energy. And he said, you know what, screw it, I'm going to do it my way. He brought stuff to our lodge that hadn't ever been done, that is still being done now, almost 10 years later of him being a master. And that's the true testament to a leader, right? They'll remember the goofy spazzy guy, but to really remember who put these things into effect, he really, there are reasons where I think that he did so much more for our lodge because he was so focused on the mission, because he wanted to be a good leader. And damn, he did a good. Shout out to Mike, man. I just love your leadership style.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's really cool to see that happen, and just that, the cool thing in Masonry too is that the brothers always, that always have your back. It's one of those things where you need some help. You need,
when you give good counsel, we may not always agree. We'll give good counsel behind, but and we can say whatever we want to each other, but nobody else better.
Right, exactly.
And I kind of call Masonry the original bro code. Your boys on the street might do you dirty, but a Mason, we have just a little different things we challenge thought process on. So I really think for more of a modern, I don't think that would be a good billboard, the original bro code, but it resonates, right? When I say it, you know exactly what I mean.
Right. No, and that's true. I know there's a whole bunch of guys in my phone right now. If I call, I need something, they'll be right there. And the same goes for me.
No questions asked.
No questions
asked. Yeah,
for sure.
Well, and I love it. So now, as you've watched an episode,
yes,
you get to the most important question of the podcast, dancing girl. So I'm going to give you 4 things that you're going to see on the screen. Yours is going to be a little bit easier. I didn't want to do totally dirty. Not totally dirty. I could have got into muscle cars. I could have got into I could have got into all of that. So, but this will be controversial enough. So on the screen, you will see 4 things, and one of them must go forever. It was never invented. So I got to actually put mine on now.
Wow. Yeah. So, I got to put the bifocals on and get into this one.
So you've got tacos, pizza, wings, and a burger. One of them was never invented. It has to go forever. Actually, you may lose followers and listeners on your podcast should you choose wrong, my friend.
Oh, I love pizza. That's got to stay. I mean, I could eat pizza every single day for every meal.
And there's a variety of pizzas you can do. You can change it up. Okay.
Yes, you can have all of those things on a pizza.
Yep.
And still have a pizza.
Yep.
Wow. So we're keeping pizza. That's just, we're going to keep pizza.
Yep.
Man, I love a taco though too. You know, hard shell, soft shell. I mean, I do love a taco. We're going to keep it tacos. You know, I don't know. All right. So I used to own a restaurant, right? And they used to serve chicken wings. That was a big deal, right? It was a wing restaurant, right? Everybody loves wings and chunks. But you know, they're this big and you have to have a whole bunch of them. And, you know, I'm not, I eat red meat maybe once a month now, you know, cut it down. Just
we're getting older. We got to be smarter. We can't outrun genetics.
Exactly. So if they never existed, I know people I'm going to catch a lot of it, but I'm going to say chicken wings.
Chicken wings.
I'm going to say those other three things.
Yeah, they're staples. You can do so much with a burger and tacos. You can't do much with a wing.
You can get it hot. You can get it not hot. You can get it sweet. You can do this. You can cook it. You can bake it. You can fry it. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, Jon, Thank you for taking time out of your life to spend with a goofy Kansas guy talking masonry. So thanks for joining, and thanks for watching the Old Fashioned Masonic Podcast.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. Cheers.